recording, please keep your camera off. Right, so show and tell 13. So very quickly, many of you will have seen this before. So this is what we're seeking to achieve. The website really is around giving residents more free time by making everything they do faster and easier. So that's what's driving everything that we're working on. The approach we take is very much around user-centered approach. So really understanding what our customers need from the service, and then presenting content that works for them. We start small and develop what we call, the buzzword that we use, we call it a minimum viable product. But basically we start with a simple version of the service, the minimum that a user needs to be able to engage with it, and then we can add the bells and whistles later. And this way we can deploy content and services quicker than we may otherwise be able to do. The work is done mainly through the content design team. So we have a team of user experience designers, UX designers. We have access to user researchers, but a lot of the writing is done by our content designers. So these are people that really understand how to put pages together that look deceptively simple, but are based on a lot of research and a lot of understanding of what users are trying to do. In the service teams, one of the key roles is the product owners. So we have somebody within the service who is responsible for approving content and enabling us to proceed at a good pace. They're not necessarily the technical experts, but they're the people that can draw in the experts from within their team to comment on things that we're doing, or to provide technical input, legal input, etc. as required. Very quickly, this is our content design process, which I'm sure you've seen before, so I'm not going to go through it step by step, but you'll see there's a number of steps we go through. Some of it is done by us, solely us within the team. Some of it is done working with you as the service providers, and a number of the steps also involve testing with external users to make sure that what we produce isn't or is suitable for their end need. And then really what we're working is we've got three legs on our stool, if you like. So I've mentioned user needs as being the most important thing that we're aiming for, but we also have to understand what the service is trying to achieve as well. So there's an overlap between user needs and service goals, and a lot of this is constrained around what technology we can apply, and where those overlap. That's really the sweet spot. That's where we're trying to work. So now more into the main presentation. So what have we been working on over the last couple of weeks? So I won't say too much about the current work streams, because that's really the agenda of what we're going to talk about over the next 20 minutes or so. What are we wrapping up? So new content types. So content types are the page designs that users see. So we've got a couple of and these take quite a bit of developing, because we have to work out what user need we're trying to meet. There's a design piece of work, then there's a technical piece of work to actually build these things and make sure that they work both on desktops and on mobile phones, which is very important. As I'm sure we've said before, more than half of our users now contact us through mobile phones, so everything we do has to work on a mobile device. So a couple of content types we're working on. One is step by step, which is for services, for example, school admissions. There's a series of steps that a parent will go through in applying for a school place. So this is a page design that helps present that in an understandable way. Another one is find a place. So this is a page with a location on it to find things like council offices, libraries, car parks, those kind of things, where there's a geographical reference. So we want to present those in a consistent way across the site. You'll have seen, I think, in previous show and tells some of the work around that, and we're just now kind of wrapping up the technical bit before we can start to use that in content. The district redirect by postcode, it's not very clear from the description what that means, but if you're familiar with the website, you'll know that quite a lot of the content still sits on what used to be district sites behind it, and many of the links many of the pages that you go to will quite quickly hand you over to a former district page. And we're trying to make that a little bit cleverer, so that rather than asking you, are you in Aylesbury Vale or are you in Wickham, we ask you for a postcode, and then behind the scenes we'll direct users to the appropriate back office system. And we're trying to make it as seamless as we can and hide as much of the legacy content as we possibly can. And with regard to other content, we've been doing a lot of work on parking, which again you've seen in previous show and tells. David's been working hard recently on creating pages for individual car parks to help people find car parks in the various towns in Buckinghamshire. That sort of content will be published hopefully very shortly, and help residents visit our towns. So with that, I'm going to hand over now to Rosanna, who's going to talk a little bit about the work we've been doing on school transport.
Okay, thank you, Jez. Where we are with school transport is we've updated all the 3 journeys that we've been working on, and this was based on feedback that we've received from the service teams, both from transport and transmissions. There's been quite a bit of feedback. We've received it from about 8 people, and we're just keeping a log of those actions in relation to what feedback we need to do. And once we've got that feedback and we're sort of ready to go, we will be ensuring that we have a clear launch plan, and make sure we've captured the changes we need to make, including things such as dependencies around other things across the website and other form packages as well. And the other thing we have as well is we have 2 versions of a page that we've designed, so that sort of can be published and published according to when application windows open and close. And that's it. That's where we are. We're hoping to go live soon after we've actually done this preparation work beforehand. And that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Rosanna. It's a huge piece of work, the client transport. So I think we've covered an awful lot of ground on a single slide there, but we'll be covering more of that as we progress. Sticking with the school theme, we've also been doing a lot of work on school admissions and preparing for this year's intake. So Stuart, if I can hand over to you and ask you just talk us through school admissions work.
Absolutely, thank you, Jez. So over the last few weeks, we've started to publish some of our new school admission pages to the website. We've done this in time for the application window, which opened for the secondary school applications at the beginning of the month. This includes pages for things like applying for a secondary school place, applying for a late transfer grammar test, and some accessible policies and guides. Over the next few weeks, we'll be reviewing the remaining pages for the area with the service, making any small changes and iterations based on feedback we've received so far, with the aim to publish everything else prior to the primary application window opening at the start of November.
Lovely. That was short and sweet, but yeah, again, a great piece of work. Really pleased with how well engaged we've been able to be with the school admissions team. It's been a great example of team working. So well done everybody that's been involved in that. And I know there's more content to follow. So I think that'll be a real benefit for parents in the future. And finally on schools, I'll hand back to Rosanna just to talk about some of the priorities for schools in the broader sense coming up.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so as well as this ongoing work that's going alongside school admissions and transport, we've identified a number of gaps in the area, and as Jez has said, we want to make sure that we're giving our users the best possible experience when using our services. So we did an internal kickoff to see that to do a bit more discovery work around this, to start looking at how we can ensure that we provide a seamless and helpful journey for our users when they access these services. So it's a more holistic approach than currently, so that it makes more sense to to the person trying to access the information. And this will inform our navigation, so how they go about being able to find various bits of content on the website as well. So what we've done is we've had a look at what possible opportunities and questions we have that's come from the work of school transport and admissions, and explored what we want to get out of this discovery, and narrowed it down to a clear, definable scope. So if we go into the next slide, I will explain what the objectives are. So a primary objective would be to understand the process and expectations of parents sending a child to a secondary school. So we'll be working with these various teams, which include admissions, client transport, appeals, and the SEND team. And then the secondary goal is we want to investigate how to manage SEND content in a way that is useful for users of this service, as well as understanding how the appeals process works and fits into the service. So that's where we currently are, and we will be in touch with various service teams to do a bit of kick-off session between them, just to sort of understand current user journeys and where improvements need to happen and what we can do to make it a better experience. So if there's anybody who feels that they have an interest in that, or they want to participate in the workshops, then please do get in contact with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Rosanna. And again, as an example of what I was saying earlier about being user-focused. So this is an example of an area where there are separate teams that look after admissions, school transport, SEND, and appeals. But from a parent's perspective, it's just the council, it's just a school application. So what we're trying to do is kind of join these services up, certainly from a perception point of view, to help users, or help parents in this case, navigate these very complex services that we operate. Lovely. Well, the other major area that we've been working on, I've jumped over your last slide, Rosanna, I do apologise, but anyway, I think you've kind of covered this. The other area that we've really been doing a lot of work on is planning and building control, which again is a huge and very complex area. I'm going to hand over to Eva to talk a little bit about the work she's been doing on content. I think you're going to...
I'm going to do a demo, Jez. Yes, thank you very much.
I'll unshare and you can take over.
Thank you very much. Right, just bear with me 1 second, everyone, and hopefully you can all see my screen. So thanks very much for that, Jez. So planning and building, as you know, we've been doing lots and lots of different user research activities. We've been interacting with our stakeholders, getting their feedback on some of the journeys. So we're now at a point where we have journeys that are not quite complete, but they're in a very good place. So we will be contacting our stakeholders again to get their input and expertise on what we've done so far. So I just want to show you 3 examples of some journeys that we've already put together. You've heard mention, I think Jez mentioned it in the opener, about design patterns and the type of templates that we use for the content as well. So this one, as you can see here, applying for planning permission, this is in effect a step-by-step pattern. It's used a lot on gov.uk. Some of you, I'm sure, are probably familiar with it. You may have applied for things or searched for things, and you're very familiar with this type of pattern that's used. It's been subject to a lot of research. So gov.uk have done a lot of research, and so have we, with our teams and with our stakeholders as well, just to find out what's going to suit the users' needs best. So what our users want, they want clear, easy to navigate pages. When they come to apply for planning permission or any of the other services that we provide them with, they might not exactly be very calm. There might be quite a lot of stress going on and a lot of outside forces and so forth. So the last thing we want to do is to present them with or overwhelm them with too much information that doesn't make sense, or journeys that perhaps don't lead anywhere or feel as if they're going round and round in circles. So with this type of pattern, as you can see, you've got an index. It's very clearly marked. You can see all the different sections within this journey, and you've also got very clear navigation as well. You can jump forward to any section that you want within this journey as well. You don't have to follow the navigation. And if, for instance, you think, right, that's great, I don't want to know about that, I want to know about this, you just simply jump to it. So it makes it a lot easier for you to find your way through the journey in a very seamless, a very intuitive way. You've still got links for related content. If there's something else that you want to know that's related to this journey, it's here on the right. So very easy for you to find, easy for you to follow, easy for you to get to. So all of these sections will have information in there that will help move you through the journey. There are sometimes links in here as well that you can click, inline links, and you can navigate back or onwards depending on what it is that you need to know or continue to do. We've got some different page types that we're going to be using as well. So this one uses accordions. So what you have are a number of different headings. And again, you can jump forward or backwards to different sections depending on what it is you want to know or what you want to get done. You click through. We've still got our postcode lookup. You can click on any of these links to go to other sections, get more information about if you don't have the right permissions, for instance. All the information is in there, easy to find. And again, inline links, we tell you if they're external, and more information if you want to go to other sections, depending on what it is that you're trying to achieve. So all of this just makes it a lot easier for the user to move through the journey seamlessly. Some of the feedback that we received in earlier user testing sessions was that users felt as if they were going around in circles. We were linking to pages and signposting them to other sections where they felt as if they were being presented with exactly the same information over and over again. So these types of page patterns and also the pages that we link to are all designed to eliminate them feeling overwhelmed, confused, and feeling as if they're not moving through a journey. We don't want them to feel overwhelmed. We don't want them to feel as if they're going round and round in circles. We need them to be able to move through the journey seamlessly and to find what it is that they need, information, a transaction, fees, more guidance, whatever it may be. And we need them to be able to do that as efficiently as possible. So this is one of our information pages. Again, it's very similar to pages that are currently live on the website. Here, all the information is presented on the page. But again, you've got links, more information about specialist services. Our fees, very important. We want to ensure that our discretionary fees and information about them are very easy to find and that users can go to those pages very easily and access the services that they need. And you've still got CTAs as well. If you want to get planning advice, you can do so here. So all of the links are available, broken it down by headlines to make it easy for the users to follow, to understand what they need to do. They can read through and they can complete their journeys seamlessly. So they're just three of the examples of the pages that we have been putting together for our services teams and also for our users. We'll be contacting them shortly as well, asking for their input and expertise to make these journeys even better. And I'll pass over to Caroline, who's going to give you some information about some of the next priorities for us on planning and building.
Right, if I just share my screen again.
Thank you very much, Jez, and thank you, Eva. Just like to say that Eva's worked so hard on these journeys. We've got 16 key user journeys in planning and building, and that's from all of the content we've been planning and building. So a lot of hard work has gone into that. In terms of next steps, where we are with planning and building is that, like Eva said, we would like to fact check the content within these 16 journeys. So Eva, if she hasn't already, will be booking in meetings or sending over draft copies for you to have a look at, and we really value your
Looks like we might have lost Caroline.
Yeah, I think Caroline's frozen. Should I just go through it until she gets her connection back?
Fine, Eva, thanks.
Yeah, no problems at all. So some of you probably already have received an email from me just inviting you to a session next week where we can get your input. You're the experts. We need to ensure that there are no glaring omissions, that we haven't inadvertently missed something. And that's where your input is absolutely vital in making sure that these journeys are as optimal as they possibly can be. Caroline is currently in the process of drafting the IA based on user needs. Lots of discussion and research has gone into coming up with the IA. We will then ensure that that is replicated in Wagtail, which is the content management system that we use for building all of the pages. And that too will be shared with our stakeholders as well, so that you can understand how all of the pages link together as well. Mobile testing will be happening in the next few weeks. Caroline will be leading on that. And again, we'll be selecting some of our key journeys to be tested by our users. That process is currently underway to recruit users for those testing sessions. It will be on mobile. It's the device of choice, isn't it? In our day and age, it's what everybody tends to use to do pretty much most of their transactions. So it's a key part of our research findings to undertake mobile testing just to ensure that what we're doing works well for us and suits our users as well. Hi there, Caroline.
Yeah, sorry about that internet issues, but Eva, did you continue it for me?
I've done the first 3. It's now on to the plan for PDFs.
Okay, thank you very much, and apologies about that. Okay, yeah, so in terms of the plan for PDFs, as you probably have heard from previous show and tells, there's ongoing work in terms of how we ensure our PDFs are accessible. So Jez and Rosie Breaks at Bucks have been doing a lot of work in terms of auditing. Myself and a colleague who's a content designer, we've spoken to many people in planning and building about the internal user needs of these PDFs too. So the aim is to kind of make them accessible, and we're looking at an MVP approach. So what's what we're going to do at the first stage, and then after that, what's the ultimate solution moving forward. So still kind of decisions to be made on that, but we're making really good progress, and also a plan for forms as well. As you know, that we've got in some areas 4 different versions of forms for the 4 different districts. So what we would ideally like to do is merge them into one, but there's conversations going on that, again, Jez has been really helpful with in terms of, from a back-end perspective, how IT can merge those forms, and also what platform is best to use for now and then for the future as well. So we are working on a content launch plan, so it sounds exciting because we're talking about publish and unpublishing pages, and our launch plan involves a process that we're going through, and in this process it involves creating seamless journeys. So for the MVP, what we're looking to do is make sure that the journey from the old site, from the new site to the old site is seamless. So as Eva said, users felt they were going through a very repetitive journey where they selected a task and then they went to the next page, and which led them onto the old site, and they had to select the task again. So we want to try and prevent that where we can, and try and make it as seamless as possible. So that's something we're working on as part of the content launch plan. And we're also looking at dates that we can potentially unpublish some of the old pages and agree on some publishing dates with those new journeys. So like I said, we're making good progress with these 16 journeys, and we're really looking forward to the feedback from stakeholders, and then eventually feedback from users as well. And that's my update so far. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. Just to add to what Caroline was saying, PDFs crop up time and again, and I know we've spoken about these before, but I can see there are some new faces on this call. So just to explain what the challenges are around PDFs is firstly, because we have to publish content that's accessible to all users. PDF can be accessible. It's not impossible to make accessible PDFs, but generally speaking, they're not. It takes extra work to make them accessible. So a lot of our legacy PDFs are not in an accessible form. So that's the first reason that we don't really like them. Second reason is that, as I said earlier, more than half of our traffic now is by mobile phone, and those of you that ever tried to read a PDF on a mobile phone will understand how hard it is, where you end up zooming it so you can read it on the screen and then having to scroll sideways to backwards and forwards to try and read the text. So they're not very mobile friendly. And the third thing is, one of the criticisms that we sometimes hear of the website is that the search isn't as good as we would like it. There are some improvements that are being made to that currently, but one of the issues with PDFs is that they don't appear in search particularly well. They may do in Google, but we don't have that level of technology on the site at the moment. So there are a number of reasons why we don't like PDFs, and we'll do whatever we can to publish as HTML content rather than PDF. But for practical reasons, we can't exclude them entirely. So that's just to explain why we've got a bit of a downer on PDFs, or appear to have a bit of a downer on PDFs. Anyway, having kind of gone off on one, I'll come back, and I'm now going to hand over to Stuart again, who's going to talk to us about the work that he's been doing with taxi licensing.
Thanks, Jez. Yeah, so to meet the service requirements of the new taxi licensing policy, which went live on 6th of September, we've now published the new taxi and private hire section on our site. So this now includes pages for things like applying for driver or vehicle licenses, getting information on license tests and training, viewing passenger fares, and making complaints about drivers or vehicles. Our new 18 pages replaced the previous 47 pages, which were spread across our district sites. And the new section sits under the parking, roads and transport section. Next slide, please, Jez. So when we wrote these pages, what we tried to do is to make sure that they all met our style guide, which is also published on our website. So when we were designing these pages, this would include things like ensuring the title clearly identified the task being performed, making sure the content was written, it was simple, easy to understand, and only included the information that users needed, and also having a clear starting point to launch into an application form, so the big green button there. We'll be testing these pages with drivers and operators from the different districts over the next few weeks, and we'll look to review any changes that are needed.
Okay, thanks for that, Stuart. And I think Stuart makes a good point. One of the key driving principles behind the approach we're taking is that we want to try and make the experience on the website consistent, regardless of which service you go to. Those of you that have used Gov.uk, which is probably everybody, you'll know that regardless of where you go on Gov.uk, there's a familiarity about the experience that you have, and we're trying to replicate that on buckinghamshire.gov.uk. Sometimes that leads to some difficult conversations with service teams because they may have a particular way that they prefer to describe their service or some of the terminology that they use. But we've had a number and we'll continue to have robust conversations about how best to present some of this information. But the reason for doing that is exactly as Stuart was explaining, that we're trying to make it as easy to use and as consistent across the whole piece. So that's what we're doing. And finally, I'm just going to talk a little bit. We've talked a lot about schools and about planning and building control, and that's because they've been our focus for the last 6 months or so, because they're very important services. They generate a lot of inquiries to our customer service centre, which is one of the reasons why we're very keen to try and improve the experience there, try and reduce the number of inbound calls. And they're also very big services. You know, it doesn't sound a lot to say schools or to say planning, but actually when you look at the number of services within that title, there's a lot of content that we need to get through. But it does leave a lot of other things that we still need to move across. And it's taking longer than we originally envisaged to do schools and to do planning, but I think it's the right thing to do them thoroughly for the reasons that I've just described. But it does mean that we need to kind of address the remaining content in a slightly different way. So what you can expect to see from us in the coming months is firstly, we'll start to look to do some of the simple stuff. So we've started from the top down, from the biggest things. We also need to look from the bottom up. What are the things that are relatively easy to migrate? So quite a lot of the content, for example, that was on the former county council site has been written in a style that's not a million miles away from what we're trying to do now. It's one council. It's not that we're trying to merge four district sets of content. So some of the county council or former county council material, potentially we can move more quickly. We will be focusing on the main user needs, so it's not a lift and shift. We're not going to reproduce everything that was on the old sites, partly because of resource, but mainly because a lot of that content is not well used, or is perhaps not relevant in the current climate, or it doesn't form this minimum viable product that I talked about earlier. So the fact that we don't move it as part of the first tier, the first tranche of content, doesn't mean it can never be moved, but it's not the initial priority. So we will be trying to slim that down, and alongside that, looking at what can we unpublish now. So there will be quite a lot of content, particularly on the district sites, that's duplicated, and we're trying to identify things that we can unpublish that will reduce the kind of workload later. Lifting and shifting is a possibility. So as I say, some of the county council stuff is ripe for that. We'll be looking to do that. And we've been trying to focus what we were trying to do when we started this work, and what we've been doing quite a lot with planning and schools is looking not just at content but also the service design. How does the forms work? Is there can we improve the workflow, not only to make it easier for residents but also to help the service team use that? That's still the utopian goal. That's what we would like to do, but realistically it takes an awful long time, and particularly with services that are very busy with their business as usual activities. So for the web content, what we will have to do is we can create new content, we can move content, but we will probably need to link to the existing forms, or whatever the kind of call to action, whatever the end result is, will probably remain as it currently is, again for the first tranche, until we've got the most of the content redirected. Which means that some of the stuff that sits in the different back office systems, we will need to try and paper over the cracks, but basically we'll pass users through to what used to be the district back office systems until such time as those services have been combined into single systems. For example, planning and building control, there's a project to combine. They all run with a system called Uniform, but there are 3 different versions of Uniform behind the scenes, so that will be brought together into a single service, but it will take quite a lot of time and money to do. So in the meantime, we'll need to paper over those cracks. And the final thing really is we're finding it's very hard to get sign off on content. We work with teams and we produce things, but actually getting approval to publish it can be quite challenging, and it's delaying progress, and it's meaning things are taking longer to go live than they should. So we're going to have to be a little bit more assertive in future. We're going to have to prepare things, and unless there is a really strong reason not to publish, then we'll have to make it live. And the beauty of digital content is you can amend it once it is live. So if the problems come up, we can fix them, but we will need to kind of up the pace a bit to try and meet some of the deadlines we've got. So that essentially is the approach that we'll be taking. And that's also brings us to the end of today's show and tell. So we've got a little section now for any questions. One of the benefits of show and tell really should be getting feedback from the audience to any further thoughts. And I know we've had some good suggestions and ideas from people in the past. So if anybody has any questions or comments, please pop them into the chat. Okay, well, I'm not seeing anything appearing, so I'm taking it from that nobody has any questions, unless.
Jez, sorry.
Yeah.
Based on your comment about content not being approved, when you agree shall we say, a digital statement to the content approvers, would possible for Digital have a copy? Because we've experienced exactly the same. Chasing, etc. So if there was a Bucks Digital sort of response to either encourage them or say we're going live, up to you now.
Yeah,
it would help. Yeah.
Well, perhaps we can pick that up outside this meeting, because we don't have a digital response as such. But what we tend to do is give them or are starting to do is to give them a clear timeline and say, okay, next Wednesday this is going live, unless you can give us a very good reason why it shouldn't.
Okay.
And we find experience suggests that it goes live on Wednesday, and then on the Thursday we get bombarded with, oh, this is what so sometimes it's necessary to force the hand. But
okay,
if anyone has a suggestion of how we can do that in a slightly less aggressive way, then we'd be very pleased to discuss it. But otherwise, that's what we're going to do.
You mean it's okay not to put them in straitjackets and force them? No.
Councillor Butcher.
Jez, can I just follow up on that? Where is the blockage for getting the content agreed? I'm just trying to think whether I can help there or whether I can help to push that forward. But where do I start? Who do I get hold of to achieve that?
Well, it's usually on a service by service basis, and I don't want to name names in this forum.
No.
It's typically on a service by service basis, and the difficulty seems to be that whilst I talked earlier about having a product owner who's responsible for content, when push comes to shove, quite often they don't feel comfortable agreeing it without their service director approving it. The service directors are extremely busy with other operational things, and it's not a priority for them. And it just sort of gets into a bit of a, it gets bogged down sometimes. So it would be really helpful if there was an instruction, I suppose, from the top down to say this is important. This needs to be published. But any support you could give would be fantastic, because we do get, quite often to the 11th hour, and then we just can't get it over the line. Sometimes we need to be very careful, because there are legal and technical reasons why, if we publish something that's legally incorrect, we could find ourselves in hot water. So it is a balance. But
let me see if I can shake the tree from the other end then.
That would be very helpful. I would appreciate that. Thank you.
I'll try.
Fantastic. Any other questions or comments before we close? Well, in that case, I thank you very much, as always, for attending. It's it's great to see so many people. You will see, those of you that work in the service areas will see that we also do show and tells for the various services we're working on. So there are show and tells for schools, there are show and tells for planning and building control. We've been doing show and tells, I think, for parking content, etc. So if anybody is interested in invitations for those others, then do get in touch, and we'll make sure that you're added to the invitation list. But with that, I will say, thanks very much, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.